Welcome back to the channel. I'm Peter Mokri, a Dallas-based DP, photographer, gaffer with a 1-ton grip van full of aperture lighting. Today we get into episode 1 of my DIY camera and grip van build. Super strut. That is what I will be going with. It is at Home Depot. And if you buy in bulk, you save, which I will be buying in bulk. So I had a couple options. There's the flatter version, which is right here. And then there's the one that's more like a, squared off. And then there's a similar one that's painted green. But should I go green and then paint it something else? But it's already coated, painted, powder coated, so it's protected. So I'm at another Home Depot. They are completely sold out of the stuff that I need. They have no more of the strut. I've only gotten 6 so far. I need to get a lot more. And then they do have a little bit more stock on a few of the things I need. So I am bulking up on as much as I can.
Can I have a guard associate aisle 48, please? Guard aisle 48.
They need a garden associate as well, so I may go save the day. All right, off to the next Home Depot. Like with any build, you always come across challenges. One of the biggest challenges I faced was getting the materials I needed at one location. I had to scour the DFW area, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just to get my hands on the strut that I needed, to get my hands on the fittings I needed, to get my hands on the hardware that I needed. One store would say, oh, we have 50 strut in stock. You go there, they have 0. I don't know how they lose these giant pieces of strut that are 20 feet long, or 10 feet long, but they seem to be able to lose them. So that was one of the challenges. And guess what? I bought a new tool to make my life easier. So here's a breakdown of the tools that I used on my van build. So first off, we have a riv nut tool to put the riv nuts into the van to connect things. We have a level. So a lot of times we're checking level, plumb, things like that. We have a socket wrench with an extension. Extension's important to have. And then we have drill bits, and then we have a step bit, which I used for drilling out the holes for the riv nuts. We have a square tape measure. We have an impact, which I use with an extension as well, to get me into an easier situation and tighter places where I don't have as much ability to be straight on. And then we have a hammer drill and a Sawzall or hacksaw or reciprocating saw, whatever you want to call it. And this is the most important tool, I think, in my build that made things easier. If you try to cut the steel with a reciprocating saw, it's messy, it's not clean, you don't get as nice of a cut. But if you use a bandsaw, it slices through it like butter. The blade is thin. It's a lot thinner than a reciprocating saw blade, and it just cuts through the steel so nicely. You get nice, clean cuts, which makes everything look better, feel better, and then there's less filing, which that's our last tools. A file, and I have bigger ones, different sizes, but you can use whatever size you need to clean up your edges so you don't have any sharp points. And then a clamp for fitting stuff out. So next up is the actual material that I used. The material I used for my build is Super Strut. It's the more square type, not the narrow rectangular type. So this stuff is really strong. It's heavy duty, doesn't have too much flex, and with spans of 5 to 6 feet that I may have, I didn't want sagging with the thinner stuff. And then we're using 3/4 plywood, which is like cabinet grade. Sometimes they have just different types. You could have like a Baltic birch or whatever the case may be. And the way I'm putting it into the system is when these lay horizontal this way, and for stuff to go on the shelving, this won't lay on top, so actually slide in like this, and then the other side will be like this. So that will be my shelf. And what that does is it creates a lip here. So when I have crates or anything come in, it has a nice rounded off lip and edge, which makes it really nice for crates or anything that goes in there. Now, obviously their shelves aren't going to be this narrow, but I accounted for the lip and the crates should fit in the space given, and the wood will sit in there, and then I'm going to figure out a way to mount it, which will come later in the video when I actually install it. But the gap itself is very minute, and if anything, I could probably wedge something in there wood wise to fill in the rest of the gap so it doesn't move. I mean, something as simple as something the thickness like this. You already see now it's nice and stiff and sturdy and not going anywhere. So I could finalize it with that, or I could mount screws from underneath, above, whatever the scenario is to hold it in place. But we'll have a lot of options. There's something to be figured out. So the next thing I want to show is the different hardware that was used. So this is a riv nut. It is used to mount on the van, so it would go in the van like this, and then it crimps up and creates a great mounting point on the van. Then we have our nuts, our angle brackets. We have flat ones as well here. Different size bolt hardware. We have long bolts, we have short bolts. And let's see what size is. There we go. I actually love using stuff that I find like at estate sales, garage sales. These are actually like baking tins for little breads or whatever the case may be, but they're metal, so they separate my hardware out. So we used inch was popular, and then these are all 3/8. And the way this actually attaches is really nice. So I'm going to set this here, and it goes in. You could either slide it in from one end, or you could put it in and then twist it like that. And then when you come in with something else, let's say if we wanted to mount this way, obviously it's not going to be centered, it's wanting to fall, but we'd put that through and mount it that way. It could go in that way. Also, there's options for gaps with this. Then there's options for elbows if you need an elbow for a situation. So there's times when I'm building and I'm going to be attaching a vertical, so I put this here, and then this attaches there. It's magnetized, so it makes it easier to move stuff around. But yeah, that's how it would actually be connected with another one of these on the other side. So there's various mounting options and different things you can do. These work out really well. They're adjustable, so that gives me flexibility. If I put a shelf up and it's here and I want to move it here, I could just slide it easily. So with that versatility and modular design, this system works out really well. So I had to buy a ton of hardware. One thing I would recommend, buy as much hardware as possible ahead of time. Save you trips to Home Depot is where I purchased all this. And overbuy. If you can afford it, overbuy, return it later. Because going back to the store 5 times versus just going back at the very end of the project to return everything that wasn't used is a lot better. I had to hunt down multiple stores just to get what I needed. A lot of places had stuff out of stock, so I have extra boxes of items just sitting around ready to go. And that's kind of it. Here's the super strut loaded up into the van, and I went ahead and did a test fit. So if we come over here, you can see these little plastic tabs with screws in them. They're holding the wall panels on that came with the van. I removed them, like you can see down here and up here as well, and then I applied the screw back on each end to give me something to hang on so I could get a test fit, see how things line up in the van with this setup. So the next step will be doing the lower section, seeing how that is, get some measurements. I might even cinch this up a bit to see where we land, and then we'll start seeing the curve and what we're dealing with, because you can see it's not straight walls up and down. So this top portion will stick out further than the lower portion. So we need to adjust for that, and I'm gonna have to make a judgment call on how I wanna do that to prevent us from sticking out too much towards the center of the van with our shelving. So I'll be dealing with a little bit of spacing difference, because you can see up top we're flush. I put a level up to this to check plumb, and this is pretty close. We're still dry fitting stuff, but if you see here, I added spacers, and what they are is they actually have them in the super strut section, and they're designed to set in place, magnetize. So I'm going to put it in place, like let's say we set it here, magnetize it in place, and then if you put a washer or a nut on the back, you could clamp down different things and connect pieces. So if we were going to connect from the front side here, we could actually set one right here. And then go all the way through and then catch the nut on the back side, and it'll hold it together and kind of give it a little more strength going through the whole thing rather than just torquing on that one joint. So it's a good solution rather than using washers, because washers will flex, they're not as strong, and it's what I'm gonna do. So these are riv nuts. They will be installed in the van, and I was practicing holes with my step bit, and I got it taped off, so when I go in to drill the hole, I should be able to get the right depth right when I hit the tape. And then this guy goes right in the hole, and then I'm able to use the specialty tool to lock these into place. And then once they're locked into place and in the walls of the van, screws can just come in and bolts can be inserted. So I wanted to practice on cardboard before I did it on the van, and did the holes too big, because if you do them too big, you're gonna have a bad time. So this is the step bit on the drill. I'm using a Milwaukee hammer drill. That's what a lot of times people recommend. Make sure you wear safety glasses. So I'm gonna drill right here in the pre-existing holes that the brackets that hold these panels on were already there. From factory, they drilled these out, so I'm gonna drill them out a little bit bigger. And I have my step marked off with tape, so that way I know where to stop, but it's actually between the last two that this actually needs to land on to work well. So let's see where we go. All right, let's see what that looks like. You're gonna get metal shards everywhere. I recommend you don't go into the house or throw these clothes into the laundry. Honestly, it's best to throw them out. So use some old junkers. So this is the riv nut that's supposed to be going in here, and there it goes. There's a special tool that crimps it down and makes it work. So we're gonna get it. But the main thing that I've been waiting on and slowing me down is the kit only came with 10 of these. And I need a whole set. So Amazon was supposed to deliver back here. I gave delivery instructions for it to, well, about time they do something right. All right, let's install them. When drilling out the holes, you actually expose the raw metal that's uncoated and unprotected from the elements. So make sure you apply a rust inhibitor, whether it's Rust-Oleum or something of that sort, in the holes to prevent rust from just penetrating and causing problems in the future. So you see me applying the riv nut here. This is just showing how it goes into place. It slides in. Here is the actual hardware that we'll be using, showing how it goes into place. You screw it in. I opted for the 3/8 over the 1/4 inch because they're bigger, and I felt that I needed the extra strength. I didn't want to use 1/4 inch hardware, so I went with 3/8. So here's me using the rev nut tool. You got to make sure everything is flush, everything is good. You don't want to torque on it, and you want to evenly apply pressure. You crank it down. A lot of people like to do 2 cranks. I was checking on them and tried doing a second crank, and there was nothing left. So I was able to apply enough pressure with just 1 crank, the way that I had it set up, to prevent it from slipping or moving or doing anything. And you can see how it looks compressed. So you get an even compression all the way around, and it applies to the sheet metal or the metal itself all the way around, holding it into place. So I made sure we were nice and snug and secure. And the way that I did that is, first off, I checked for any movement, but I also was able to kind of put a camera in back there and just kind of see what kind of compression I was getting, and I was getting a good seal all the way around. So that was really good. You could also check by measuring the depth of the nut whenever it goes in, so you can see that it's actually been compressed and how much it's been compressed. So here's me reapplying another one, getting it put in. You see the pressure we're getting on it. You've got to be really careful not to over torque the actual bolts that you put on, because you're going to cause problems in the future. On the next episode, we start installing the strut and we figure out the layout for the van. Let me know what you guys think of the build so far in the comments below. Also, stick around for the next one. I'll see you guys soon.